welcome to Making Music at Masterdisk. I'm Scott Hull, the owner and chief engineer at Masterdisk in New York. And today we have a special episode. A client and musician, songwriter, bassist extraordinaire, Stephan Crump, is joining us. Welcome, Stephan.
Hi, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm really looking forward to this. We've been talking about doing this for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
This podcast is intended to take a look at the musicianship, the decisions that a producer and musician make in the recording process and in the production process, where the audience is definitely vinyl savvy and vinyl interested, and maybe even vinyl curious. And so we can talk a little bit about some of the trials and tribulations on making the vinyl, but I really want to find out about Slow Water. I've read a little bit about it, but I'd like you to hear from you some of the reasons why this project exists, and how it exists, who you brought together. I know this is a gigantic question, but I'd love to hear you talk about this album that we did together several months ago that was recently released and has been really well reviewed. And I think everybody should go buy a copy and listen to it. But tell us why.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, so I've done a lot of different kinds of records through the years. Most of my own work is in the sort of the creative instrumental realm, the greater jazz universe, if you will. And this, at the end of 2022, I was invited to apply for this grant from the Shifting Foundation. And I had long wanted to do a project that honored the relationship I have with a number of bodies of water that have been had major impact on me at various points in my life. And this grant, which part of the application for which involved making a proposal for a project and then creating a budget for it and everything, but it was a significant thing if you get it. So I was able to really envision a project that was well beyond what I would have been able to do otherwise. And I thought, this is my chance to do this, to realize this idea that I've had for many, many years. And so the initial thing was and part of my proposal was to create a body of work. Well, first of all, research these various bodies of water in different parts of the world, starting with the Mississippi River, which was where I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis exists because of the river, and as does the music that comes from there, etc. And I spent a lot of time. That was my first source of power and energy and inspiration as far as bodies of water. Is hugely impactful on me, and I think it set up my sort of the nature of my relationship with other bodies of water down the line. But the idea was to look at these bodies of water and see how they're faring in this very crazy time of climate change, and which I knew would probably be a pretty upsetting and maybe not so generative of inspiration type of plan, but it felt honest, and I trusted that it would be a good starting point. And I also wanted to push myself as far as instrumentation, which I've done in various ways through the years, but a lot of, sort of shying away from straightforward, more traditional jazz-oriented lineups. Although I've done some, quartets and quintets that are, more traditionally structured. As you and I have worked on some of my projects that have, like my Rosetta Trio with acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and bass. And I've done a lot of unorthodox trios and a lot of duo projects, and I've learned a lot through that process of these unorthodox groups and drumless groups. A lot about magnification of each gesture within an ensemble, and like the expansion of responsibility of each musical gesture when you are in a more exposed ensemble where there's very few people, right? But with Slow Water, I wanted to challenge myself to expand the size of the ensemble, yet try to maintain some of the things that I've learned over the years of working in these duos and unorthodox trios. And I wanted to work with I wanted to have a string trio that was part of it, so I put my idea was violin and viola, and I'm playing acoustic bass. And then I wanted horns, so trombone and trumpet, which is the first time I've worked with just brass in that sense, without any reeds. And at first I was thinking about drums with that, but then I eventually shifted to drumless and to have vibraphone instead. So acoustic bass, vibraphone, violin, viola, trombone, and trumpet. And
I'm gonna interrupt you for a second and let you catch your breath, because I was going to share with the listeners my experience of watching this ensemble play live and play this piece. It was very it was interesting, but certainly sitting there, I had heard the music before. I heard the entire piece. So, that it doesn't. Sometimes I see the musicians when it's playing, and sometimes it's a little less clear. Obviously, there are only 5 players, and obviously only these things, were 6 players, including yourself. I'm sorry.
Thanks.
And leaving you out again. But seeing the way the stage was set up, I just started prior to Downbeat. I was like, this is really pretty interesting. When I first approached the record, I don't think, well, what's the ensemble? I just take it in. How's it hitting my ears, and what do I feel like it needs? But it was very interesting. I would highly encourage people that wanted to experience this to not just sample it, to actually let the piece work on you, and let the instrumentation kind of develop, and then because that was my reaction to watching the piece. By about half the way through, I stopped. I don't want to make it sound too laden with with fluff, but I sort of stopped watching an ensemble at that point, and I was kind of part of the music that was happening. It just felt, and then sort of about 2/3 of the way through, I started looking at other people within the room and kind of seeing what their reactions were, and I noticed people seemed to be almost in that same kind of a very cleansing and cathartic kind of experience. So I just figured I'd let you take a breath there, but I'd love to hear more about it. But the ensemble was set up with the strings on as I'm looking at the stage, strings to the left and bass more or less center left, and percussion or vibes center right, and then the brass on the right side. Everybody was absolutely stellar. We'll mention names a little bit later.
Well, thank you, Scott. I mean, that's what more could I want from from a response to the experience. So one of the things that was really important to creating this is, I wanted to challenge myself in many ways with this project, and that included the approach to composition and the approach to band leading. So I didn't just want to dive in and start writing a bunch of new tunes. And I wanted to really somehow push myself into some new terrain, scare myself, and grow through that. And so I wanted the research to dictate as much as possible the choices that I made in all of those domains. And on my way out the door of the final interview in this application process for the grant, they were very excited about this idea, and the director of the Shifting Foundation, David Breskin, said, "Oh, by the way, you might really like this book, Water Always Wins, by science journalist Erica Gies, Gies, which, of course, I highly recommend." And within just a few weeks of the process, I started reading that book, and it really I just totally took off with the inspiration through this book. And without going into a whole, it's pretty epic to get started talking about all this stuff. But basically, she goes all over the world and interviews scientists and activists and members, leaders of various indigenous communities in these sort of extreme environments who have had to manage their water in particular ways for a very long time, but also activists who are looking at ways we're damaging the environment through controlling water and what that has done, and finding ways to release the control of water and allow it to do what it wants to do, and and what are the benefits that come from allowing that. And so, basically, in a nutshell, some of the things that water wants to do when it's allowed to do what it wants to do is to meander and slow down. And when it does that, it drops the beneficial sediment and creates these fertile environments and wetlands. And then there's a chapter on beavers, and I started, and then I got into a whole other book called Eager, which is by Ben Goldfarb, which is all about beavers. It's fascinating. But anyway, beavers contribute to this process because when they make their dams, the water, pushes against the dam, and that helps slow the water down and helps it to spread, and it drops sediment, and then and it goes into the process that I just talked about.
Well, it creates whole ecosystems for a whole bunch of other organisms that probably couldn't exist in a fast-moving stream.
Exactly. So when we control water, we do the opposite. We straighten it, and which makes it go faster, and it digs out. Instead of dropping sediment, it just shoots its way through and does this fire hose effect where it just scours the bottom of the water until it gets to bedrock, and then you have no there's no area for the microfauna and stuff to thrive and help develop these fertile ecosystems. So okay, so let's leave that as the nutshell.
I love one of my taglines for this podcast is where we explore the science and art of making music. But this is really where science and music come together.
So thinking about, and I've long as a band leader and as a bassist working in other groups, and also as a human, just this notion of the destructive aspects of control in human nature. It's been something that I've been considering for a long time and trying to work on in myself. But particularly in the context of band leading and making music, I've seen how detrimental too much control from a band leader can be. Simply put, it contributes to, like, you can put a bunch of interesting notes in front of people and tell them, like, you play this, you play this, you play this, and everybody's playing the stuff at the same time, and they can be doing that at a very high level of artistry and whatnot. But what you're gonna get is resides more on the surface, right, of our humanity. Like it's in the information sphere of like flashy notes. And there's already plenty of that in the world of music and in the world generally. And what I'm interested in, which you touched on as far as your experience in hearing us live, I'm interested in getting, in transcendence and getting to a more spiritual place and like opening up a portal for myself and for the musicians and for the audience. And like really tapping into some like universal truth. And so finding ways to relinquish control, which is the main theme from this book, the benefits of relinquishing control and just letting things meander, letting things slow down, not forcing the issue. And just trusting that if, as an ensemble, if we just trust each other and let go and don't target like a fixed point that the music's always just trying to get to, but just keep falling into each other, trusting that it will deepen and expand in another direction. Like it'll go deep instead of shooting like a rocket ship towards this, like I said, like, to this fixed end point that I think music can often be about.
Yeah, they had several thoughts within that, but it was interesting because, I had heard the studio rendition of it and recognized themes for certain, absolutely recognized themes, and the direction and the flow of the piece seemed very similar. But I had noticed, I wasn't really trying to study the arrangement, but I noticed there were deviations and were significant deviations. So I have a couple questions, but
Yeah.
I think you're on a great topic here to just continue talking about how these ideas then turned into an ensemble, and how the people you picked brought their own humanity to it.
Yeah. So I'll just address the band leading and then talk about the composition a little bit more directly. Sure. The idea, band leading wise, and this is a great challenge, of course, is how do you create a coherent musical statement and at the same time relinquish as much control as possible and give as much agency as possible to all the other members of the ensemble. But that is the idea, and I strongly believe that the more agency you give people, the more responsibility you give them, the more ownership, if you will, over what the music actually becomes, the more they step up to that and open themselves to that. If it's a good thing that makes sense to them, of course, and if it's the right people for the occasion, they will, instead of just giving you that surface level version that capable musicians are able to offer, they'll open themselves and you'll get to a deeper, you'll get a deeper expression, a deeper commitment, a deeper offering from each member of the ensemble. And so the idea for this is, unlike a lot of my other projects, which have specific solos, where it's always ultimately collective in making music. Even when there's a soloist, everybody's building the music together. But in this project, I didn't really want solos. I wanted it to always be a collective endeavor. And so with the composition, and this speaks to what you were just saying about certain aspects being recognizable in the concert versus the album, and then others not as much, which is also the idea that it's not the same as far as the specifics of the material. It's not the same every time. But what it wound up being is there are 8 what I think of as the principal compositions that are almost completely through composed. So 8 principal pieces that are through composed, but also in the composition, there are areas where people don't have specific notes to play, but they have very simple indications of like, it's really inviting them to evoke aspects of whatever wetland we're in at that time. So that might be like burbling gases coming up from the peat, or fireflies, above the water, or breezes, or fog, or and so there's specific indications like that, and then there's an overarching directive to everyone that whatever they feel is appropriate at any time to further this evoking of whatever environment we're in, is they are invited to offer it, and whatever it is, if they're feeling it, is right. So that's part of it. So it's like both through composed, but also has openings that are different every time. And then, so those are the 8 principal pieces. And then there's 8 what I call flow zones, which are like the liminal spaces connecting each of those 8 pieces. And the flow zones are completely spontaneously composed by the band based on this overall concept that we're going for of relinquishing control and trusting each other, and just deepening and releasing and building things that way, and evoking these wetlands and flow in various ways. But but each of the flow zones is based on a very simple directive, like one of them is it was just, let's play half notes together at like whatever tempo I picked at the time, 72 BPM or something. And so we started playing half notes, and that's all I said. And it went from there. And so it starts with, I think that's called a crete on the record, for those of you keeping score. And some of them were totally open. I just said, let's try one with the violin, viola, and vibraphone, and they just went. And but some of the things had very simple verbal directives. But whenever there's another thing about doing conceptual pieces with text directives, is I've had the experience of band leaders giving me a thing with a whole paragraph of information that I'm supposed to be dealing with while I'm also creating, and it's just too much. It keeps me in my head. And so it's a similar thing of not controlling people and keeping them captive in their heads, which is not at all where I want people to be, or I want to be myself in this creative process. So always very simple, like a few words and nothing more. And then just trusting people to compose. And so we recorded a bunch of those. And then after I put, I put the whole piece together, and the whole piece, Slow Water, is a 67-minute suite that moves continuously from the flow zones to the principal pieces, then another flow zone to another principal piece. And so what you were recognizing in the live experience, which is how we do it live, was you were recognizing a lot of the themes from those principal pieces, and then you may have recognized some of the textures from the flow zones, but those ultimately are just wildly different every time. And even the main pieces, because of those different open aspects to it, are a little bit different every time too.
Yeah, there's a you're giving the performers a huge um, responsibility
Yes.
to play something that contributes. But I couldn't help but keep thinking of the communication of it's not just that you're playing something, in your random, where you're at, but you need to communicate, sort of also communicate your intention with the other ensemble members, like when I'm going to, am I wrapping this up? Is this just a thing that I'm doing, or have I actually made my statement yet? Have I completed my statement? There's we've all probably experienced a modern ensemble where it literally seems like 8 musicians with in separate silent rooms, playing something completely unrelated. While that can be mildly entertaining, it's a lot easier to do than what you're asking the performers to do. stay in character and stay within these vague lines, but yet completely be free to express themselves. I had noticed that on occasion, the reactions of the musicians, where another performer would delight them with something that they had played. There was some actual spontaneous reactions. Especially,
for sure.
I was able to see what the strings were doing, which was pyrotechnics without a doubt. And at times they were, impressing themselves and impressing each other, with like, oh my God, I can't believe you just played that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun to watch, how just really in the moment, completely different than an ensemble where the rhythm section is chugging along and someone's doing something free along with them. I mean, this is, it's pretty remarkable. I could talk all day, but I would love to hear more about, a little bit maybe about how the musicians themselves influenced the parts. Like what did they play that really surprised you and really made you rethink, or think that you really had got it right in the first place?
Yeah, well, thank you, Scott. I would say the biggest impact that it had on me, sort of the overall impact, was just deep gratitude and just really being deeply moved by how much this concept worked, as far as like really making everyone feel that I was trusting them maximally and really inviting them to be the most expansive version of themselves as they felt was appropriate, within this context. And like, really, it was this project was as much about that philosophy and the ethos of the ensemble and this process as much as it was about any of the compositions themselves. And it's I'm so sort of astonished at how much this worked and how much people were willing to give of themselves to it, and just how deep this music wound up running, and so the thing about the individual stuff is that it's more, as opposed to a lot of contexts where it's about solo, handing the solo. It's like this person solos and this person solos, and then you play the head, and all of which can be super cool, by the way. This was just about, was trying to go down another path and go deep down that path, and it worked. But the idea is, instead of it being ego oriented, which that more traditional approach can really engender, this is more about ego dissolution and like I said, giving ourselves over to each other. And so it's not just trying to let go of yourself and your ego and fall deeper and deeper into each other and deeper into nature and this process. And that's, I think that creates this spiritual opening that really communicates through the music more than anything else. And I'm super happy with the more surface level information, by which I mean the notes that are involved and, you know, all those aspects of the composition, the structure and everything. I love all the pieces, and it's such a rich experience working out this music and challenging myself to compose and arrange for this instrumentation that I had never worked with before. So that was all fascinating. But as much as that, like, all of that stuff is meaningless if it doesn't have that deeper level informing it. And I really think that's what the spirit is, the most important thing to me as far as what what is supposed to be communicating.
Yeah, I don't think you're overstating that. After you listen to it, after you experience it, and you kind of feel it. You see that there was a guiding hand, softly, gently guiding through the whole thing. But it was. It's very interesting. It was sort of remarkable interpretations. Your mallet player, it almost makes me a little curious because almost everything seemed to be so distinct, obviously because it's a mallet, and very purposeful. It betrays. What's the right word? It doesn't look like it was as free and improvised as it's described, but at times it was clearly evolving from one thing into something else.
Mm-hmm.
I just if anybody was had any kind of ideas of trying to do this themselves with a particular topic, boy, the musicians really have to be listening to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
To not only figure out where their part fits in, but it's it's as difficult. Imagine a spontaneous 6-person conversation where there's little 2 people talking, little 3 people talking, little 6 people talking. Everybody's contributing and communicating, but yet everyone is leaving space for each other. Mm-hmm. My words aren't doing a terribly good job of trying to express this, because it's what I've said initially is all I'm trying to come back to. Is I don't think you're overstating the underlying force or the guidance that you built into it. I think that was that showed up.
Well, thank you.
That was sort of visible.
Yeah, I think part of the key, Scott, is that it's not like. I think it's helpful to look at free playing or improvisation as composition. That's what it is. And so it's not about like, oh, I'm going to play my shit and it's going to be cool and, it's going to make people clap or whatever it is that you're looking for. It's no, what are we trying to create together? And how do we do that? And the other thing is, as interesting, in spontaneous composition, there's not just motif and developing motif like melodies and lines and figures. There's also, and this is something I've been after for a long time, is like really magnifying other aspects of the music. And this was a great opportunity for that, is texture and just color, but especially texture. Like the first piece on the record, which is called Sound, which is actually not sound as in music, but sound as in Puget Sound in the Pacific Northwest, which was one of the bodies of water that has had a great impact on me. But it's So the directive for that is just like choose a note and just hang on it and let it slowly develop, but just feel the texture and sort of the mottled colors that interact with an ensemble of 6 people just hanging out on a note, and then very slowly developing that, bending from one note to the next, but really not being in a hurry, just trying to create this enormous body of water that has maybe some currents flow through it and flit around, but overall it's just settling on the texture, and of course the piece develops from there, again, because that's all I said and I just let people compose. But really not feeling like it always has to be about playing lines, right, and exciting like solos. It's not about that. It's about color and texture and taking time and meandering and trusting. So you get it's like presenting a piece of visual art. Like, what is it that you decide to showcase in your, what is the focus on? Is it a portrait, or is it just like a wall of color, and then with just the subtle variations of shades of that color and texture of it? What is it that you're presenting? And I'm really interested in just, texture and color as much as I'm into rhythm, and I'm into melody and structure and motif and all of that stuff. It doesn't always have to be focused on that. There's times where it can just settle and on texture.
What are your thoughts these days about this work and this ensemble? What do you think the future might be?
Well, one of the things that, as I've said, one of the things, the most powerful things that I discovered in this process was the impact of the approach to making this music, and how spiritually expansive a process it is for the musicians and the audience. So I'm, in addition to looking for more performance opportunities for us, I'm also interested in working on bringing it to conservatories and various music programs, to bring other musicians, younger musicians, into this process so they can experience it and hopefully be inspired by it and sort of hopefully deepen their own music making process.
Well, that's huge, because I had a little bit of experience of that in my music school years, because there was some contemporary composition and alternative modern music creators within the program that were looking for people to try to interpret their modern themes, modern performances, modern notation, all sorts of things that really opened your mind to I can only imagine what that might have felt like as a music student or conservatory student, to say, you don't have any paper, you don't have any staff lines in front of you. You've played for most of your entire life following the notes on the page. Now you have to anticipate the noises you're going to make and anticipate how they're going to blend with the other things that you hear. We did a little bit of that, and I got a little taste of that, and always look back on that opportunity to get way outside of the lines, both from a classical figures and motifs and vertical alignments of everything, but also the even really stretched the jazz paradigm a lot because it was composed. Composed pieces that were intended to work in a particular way, but I would think that that could be very very enlightening.
Yeah.
For everyone involved.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
and because it would also bring each performance brings a whole nother opportunity.
yeah, and my hope is that it would get people to exercise a deepening of where their intentions come from in the process of making the music, and learn how to go deeper with that. And then the other thing I'm looking for, and I've already got a couple of things, opportunities but this is more ambitious, that involves highlighting the environmentalist aspect of this, the inspiration driving this project. And so that involves doing going to university and creating a cross-departmental interaction and series of events between the music department and the natural sciences, environmental sciences, et cetera, and other related departments. And so bringing, trying to connect these worlds and bring people from these various communities together, and sort of expand the awareness around this, like the issues of the destructive nature of control, and what we've been doing, and how we might undo things, undo that damaging trajectory. The other thing is there's someone I'm hoping to do this next year, next June, for World Oceans Day. There's someone at the UN who's trying to get us to take part in events around that. So just part of the frustration of being, I feel enormously blessed to do what I do, and I have no question about sort of the relative importance of it, or it's the meaningfulness of it, and the positive impact it can have on people. But at the same time, when you care about certain issues in the world and you hope to address them in a more direct manner, sometimes like creative instrumental music can feel a little bit abstract as far as creating an impact. So if that's part of why the potential for these kinds of more expansive engagements through this project are really exciting to me, that I could maybe play a little bit more positive role in other ways, in that, connecting people. So
a bunch of visuals popped into my head as you're describing it. I personally, I'm not unique, but I'm not maybe typical in this respect. I'm actually very happy that visuals weren't presented in this environment as I watched the performance, because it was just like Technicolor in my mind. Then I could imagine whatever it was that I was imagining. The irrigation pond that was behind the house where I grew up, and the trout stream that meandered around through the bottoms, just the other side of that, where I caught trout with my father when I was, on first day efficiencies. And so I could imagine and see whatever I could imagine, but it takes a certain determination and patience to let that sort of happen, especially as fast and as instant everything is at our thumb's reach.
Totally.
So it's in certain environments, working with environmental groups and people that probably aren't used to being this patient around music. The visuals might actually help kickstart their ideas. But at the same time, the real creative people who really are there to be moved into a new place. I appreciated that it wasn't visual.
Yes. Well, meaning like there weren't like projections of visuals.
I didn't need to see a duck, walking across the or paddling across the brook to
No. No, that's not. I've actually had people suggest that to me as like, and I feel like, no, I don't want to impose that on people. That's not the experience that you were pointing to. That is exactly what I think. What I would prefer is like people. It opens up something for people, and then they have their own journey through that. But I also agree with you, and part of this thing is like it's about taking time. It's about meandering. It's about settling. It's a meditation, and I think we increasingly like that's radical right now, because of like what you said, instant gratification, and we're constantly flitting around and needing stimuli all the time. And this was really saying like that's one of the risks of it is like, no, I'm creating this space, or we are creating this space where it's not about that, and it's an invitation to let go of all that other stuff and go deeper. It's really amazing that people are having that, they're responding to that, and they're going there. It's beautiful.
I assume the musicians' reactions are very positive, but are they? Is it transformative even for them? Within the performance aspect of it.
Yeah, that's one of the very moving things, because you always want, you always want your colleagues to appreciate the music, and in this case they're like, I feel, and both from things that they've said to me in describing their experience or just responding to it, but also just in the nature of their presence and feeling where they are after we do the performance, for instance, or in the studio when we're making it. Like it's a very deep and rich and moving experience for the musicians, and that is like, it's so meaningful to me to have sort of have fostered that that kind of environment and that kind of experience for people to engage with. And like I said, it's something that I want to bring to younger musicians who are, so they can experience it as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Let's give some props out to your musicians. Tell us who was playing.
Thank you. So on vibraphone, it's Patricia Brennan. And I should say that one of the challenges that the stack of challenges that I wanted to push myself through with this project was collaborating with new people and creating new relationships. Patricia is one exception. We've done very few other things over the years, sporadically, maybe 3 or 4 gigs. And I always she's just an incredible musician and wonderful person. So I always had in mind, like, I gotta, put a project together with us. So Having her there was amazing. She's just like, her sound is so special, and her feel, like, she and I are sort of everybody in the ensemble is responsible for feel, and feel is the most important thing to me. That's like first base is the groove and how things are feeling. But it's just like grooving with her is sublime. And so we're just having a ball with it. So then on viola, it is Joanna Matry, and I had never worked with Joanna, and she's just totally unique artist and a real freak in the best way, best ways.
I saw things played that I'd never even imagined. Could do so.
Yeah. And then on violin, this was this is on the record, not at the live show, but on the record, it's Unia Eddie Kwan, who is, well, these people are all incredible, so I'll stop saying that. But she and I had worked on just a couple of things, and with a mutual friend, just one concert and a recording session in a kind of a large ensemble. And I just remember feeling this laser beam of energy emanating from her presence in the music, and I immediately knew I needed to put something together for us. And so I was so excited to do this. And so that was the string section, was Joanna and Eddie. And then on the horns, it's Jacob Garchik on trombone, who we had not done any gigs together. I had him over to my place early in that last year when I was thinking about the ensemble, just to see how our chemistry was. And he's just, I'm just so in awe of his musicianship and what he brought to it. And these people all have their own records too, and they're all like really great composers and band leaders. So I also encourage people to check out their stuff. I've been listening to this album that Jacob put out. I think it was in 2012. I'm gonna space on the title, but it's all trombones. It's like an atheist trombone gospel. No, atheist. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I'll put the info in the show notes.
Thank you. I'll send it to you.
I'm curious.
It's so good. But he's done so many great records. But okay, and then speaking of great records, Kenny Warren is on trumpet, and he just put out a great album called Sweet World, which is a trio with cello, drums, and trumpet. I'm spinning that record like crazy right now. It's beautiful. So anyway, Kenny Warren, trumpet, Jacob Garchik, trombone, Patricia Brennan, vibraphone, Joanna Matry, viola, Unia Eddie Kwan on violin.
And Stephan Crump on acoustic bass.
That's right.
What I'll say sort of in closing from the musician standpoint, from your contributors, is I could hear them editing themselves, but in a very good way. They weren't just playing. I could hear them deciding not to play.
Yeah, it's composing. Like
and it was like, or they would contribute something, and almost they weren't waiting to see if it got echoed back. They were just kind of waiting to see if that inspired somebody to do something with it. Just like you were throwing an idea out, if you were, collaboratively working on a project. I was like, I don't know, maybe if we put the logo here in bold and we put a black circle behind it.
Yeah.
And you kind of wait to see what people's reactions are to it. It's like, well, I kind of like that, but black isn't my thing, but maybe, And so there was that kind of collaboration going on where you'd hear people kind of like say something and then stop and then contribute. As you can tell, I was quite impressed. And I'm dare I say, not easily impressed because
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of music
Sure.
over the years.
Yeah.
But no, it was a really, really nice ensemble. It was really well put together. A lot of people should hear this. A lot of people need to slow down enough to be able to appreciate this. Honestly, if this inspires somebody to pick up the record and to listen to it, and they can't get past the first 6 or 8 minutes of it, you may want to stop and think about your priorities in your world and in your life, and not saying from a conservational standpoint. It's just you're so wrapped up in this urgency of everything that you're really missing something.
Yeah.
Contribute, take an hour out of your day and let this thing work on you. It's it's very interesting. Stephan, it's been really been a pleasure speaking with you about this. I learned even more about the ensemble and about your methods and things than I knew before, and hope the listeners enjoyed it. Where can they find this? Where can they find you?
I think the best place is at my Bandcamp page, which is stephancrump.bandcamp.com, and Stephan Crump is StephanCrump. So stephancrump.bandcamp.com or stephancrump.com. I have it in my store there, but most people are comfortable with Bandcamp. And so I've got it there on high-res digital, CD resolution digital. It's on CD, and as you are well aware, it's on double vinyl as well. And
what a massive project! Do we want to do a sidebar here on the vinyl?
Sure. Yeah, that could be informative for people.
So what's your, the ends justify the means, I think is the catchphrase for this project.
Yeah.
We got there.
We totally got there.
But it took a lot of soul searching and a lot of second guessing and a lot of, really, we got to do this again.
Yeah.
A lot of moments where the circumstance of making vinyl kind of let us down. I don't even know in hindsight whether there's any particular even reason that we could blame for it. But my take on this was to be a little less vague. We did everything that we could to make a great sounding record, and you and I worked together on it, and I cut the masters and sent it off, and what we got back was about half of a great record.
Yeah.
And the other half was really pretty disappointing. It had some things that we would call really major flaws.
Yeah.
You could have released it the way it was, and probably no one would have really hated it, but that in the middle of the third side probably would have upset some people, certainly upset us. We worked with the plant. I made some new cuts. We sent them out. We got some other results back. Not amazing also, but a little better.
Yeah.
So, I don't know whether there's all that much more to say about it other than it's not like making a CD.
No. It's a commit.
You can have all the best intentions and have it come back not being outstanding. What's your takeaway, or what did you do right and wrong, and what might you do differently next time?
Yeah. Well, you and I have done a number of LPs together over the years, and we've had other issues, but nothing like this, and it's always gone better than this. But but a couple of times there's been something, and it's been a process to track it down. But yeah, this was a lot extra. I think certainly because of the very spacious, exposed, dynamic nature of this material, it really demanded as clean a canvas as possible, which is I guess, a challenge these days a lot of times in making vinyl. And so I would say to those who haven't done this before, it's, yeah, as you said, it's not like making a CD. It's a physical, mechanical thing, and things can go wrong at different parts of the process, and it's a commitment. Like, and for me, I'm not interested in putting crap out. You know, it's about the art, it's about the work, and I want it to be as good as it can be. And so people have the complete, as rich an experience and as deep a connection with it as possible. So if I commit to making a vinyl edition of an album, I'm going to stick with it until we get there. And unfortunately, this one, it took more than I had ever anticipated or experienced before, especially one of the sides. I don't know if it was like 6 rounds or something, but it was crazy. It was a lot.
It was a little, yeah. We were all questioning our resolve and our sanity, I think, involved in the whole thing. It's some records, some records go straight through and really have no particular issues, and others don't. It's a very I'll say it's a handmade product. Even though big machines are used to press the record, a lot of hands touch the records while they're being made. A lot of hands are involved in not just the manufacturing of the blank disc before I cut it, and then my operation to cut the record, and then hands package it and ship it to another place where that gets turned into a metal part. But another group of hands handle it and process it. And
yeah,
there literally are hundreds, if not thousands, of ways for the record to go wrong. So when you do end up with a record that checks all the boxes, like it's good musically, it's or good or great musically, and it's great sonically, and it's great technically when you get it back from the pressing plant, it's special. It's worth celebrating, because I think the people making records 40 years ago were doing it so much and had learned a lot over many generations of making records. They kind of made it look easy.
Yeah.
And I think we're now realizing in the past 10 years, we're really realizing how much extra effort needs to go into making a record that is really great. We lost a lot of people that, along the way that had these experiences. So the new groups of people who are involved in businesses that are involved have had to learn and using new materials and new methods to turn out a great sounding record. But it's being done. You just have to look carefully for them.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's been really gratifying after all of that work on this that people are loving the sound of the LP, and in fact to get the Michael Fremer tracking angle endorsement that is the mother of all reviews from my standpoint. Sweet. I mean, he's honestly, you could do a lot worse than just buying the records that he recommends that he reviews well, because he expects perfection. Yeah.
On almost every level. He wants to be impressed by the artwork, he wants to be impressed by the music, he wants to be impressed by the story, and he wants to be impressed technically with what's coming out of actually coming off the record. So, yes, I'll celebrate with you on that one.
Great.
A good
you
review
should,
from
Scott.
Michael is not the first one for us, but it's but that was exactly, I think, was what we shared in the email, was like, well, that's good considering how much work went into this. It's really nice to have someone recognize it for being special.
That's great. Yeah, and there's thankfully been a lot more than that, but that is very special. But yeah, there's been just the response to Slow Water has been very meaningful.
Well, sweet. I'll wrap up now. I appreciate your time. Listeners, if you've stayed through this whole thing, then congratulations. That's 67 minutes. That's exactly how long that Stephan's piece is. So go grab the record or the CD or the download and give it a listen. But share it with somebody who needs to slow down a little bit. They may thank you. Or they may think you're nuts, but that's what that's what new music is all about, right there.
Yeah. Cool.
So wrapping up, this is Making Music at Masterdisk. I'm Scott Hall, and thanks again to Stephan Crump and Slow Water.